All right, hey, so I'm Ben Opel specifically. You see it on the bottom left of the slide. And this is not another MITRE ATT&CK talk. That's not what you see on your flyer. It's not what you saw on the schedule. That's because last time I came here, there was maybe one MITRE ATT&CK talk. At all the other conferences, though, I've been to, there are several, and most of them are not great. So I'm going to continue that trend, except for that last bit. So moving forward, I only have 25 minutes. I'm not going to waste too much of it. I come from a background in cyber defense, DoD for about 7 or 8 years, been working in the private sector for 2 years now. Built teams of every color you can imagine. It was really fun. There was lots of money and no one cared where it went. It just tended to go up in flames, especially in the special operations community. You know what I'm talking about if you've been there. Either way, I was politely shown the door a few years ago. I'm still on the Christmas card list, but now I get to work with a company called Attack IQ and the pro services team. Won't go too much into that. Ask me about it afterwards if you like. I'm not in sales. All right, what we're going to do today, lay down some ground rules. I do this every time I give a talk because things have gotten adversarial in the past and not in the way we all know and love. A little bit of a lead-in, why we're doing it. And then we're going to talk about threat-informed defense, about knowing yourself, becoming informed by the threat, becoming the threat, and then bragging about it to all the right people. And then we'll talk about some tools you can use to get after the actual MITRE ATT&CK part. All right, ground rules. I will always call out bad practices. I will assert mostly arguable truths. I will assume everybody in the room has the best intent, and I will attack problems. On the other side of that, I will almost nearly, in most cases never, call out bad companies by name, make stuff up, and just pull it out. I will assume the best effort. I will never assume best effort. I will generally assume that people aren't trying hard enough that they actually have potential to do better things. And I will almost never attack people personally. That's actually the one that's hard and fast, so don't worry about that right there. One rule above all else, come at me, bro. If I say something you disagree with, I do want to hear about it. No good hypothesis survives the first experiment unscathed. So let's lead it in. So where we stand on this right now, I'm not here to teach you how to attack with the ampersand. It's great, but it's pretty simple. If you work in the field and you go to the website, I promise you, you will figure it out pretty darn quick. The important part here is to teach, to show, to demonstrate that you all have the power to do something with a whole lot of free stuff that's out there, and to do so without using a lot of money, which is pretty important for a lot of us. Even if it's not you, everyone wants to save a bit. The important piece here is that fundamentals are fundamental, and that you may not be working with a full set of fundamentals. This is not an accusation. I am not working with a full set of fundamentals. This is something that I want to give to you because I found it to be very useful, both for my own personal work and for all of the customers I deliver services to, for all of the units that I supported when I was in the military. This is a discrete workflow that can do an awful lot of good for a lot of people, in my humble opinion. We want to create constructive interference here, okay? That's the whole idea of using a workflow, a methodology like this that you're about to see, because understanding threats opens up avenues of research. New avenues of research generates lots of good data. Data gives you, what's the word I'm looking for? Actionable data, I mean. Actionable data, there it is, it's right there. Creates good test cases to see if what you're doing is actually right. And good tests let you understand risk as a function of preparedness for a threat. And that's the end state we all want to get to when we're talking to the people who make decisions. Feedback loop starts, we go back to the top, and we continue improving ourselves. That's what we're trying to do here. And that's the context within I will talk about MITRE ATT&CK as a tool for creating or helping you create a threat-informed defense. Now, what is threat-informed defense? Anybody ever seen MITRE Ingenuity? Yeah, one in the back, good man. The Center for Threat-Informed Defense is a nonprofit organization that does a lot of independent research and funded research by, with sponsors and partners to help advance this discipline. And it consists of 3 things, and that is threat intelligence, using good threat intelligence, defensive engagement of the threat, which is emulation, red teaming, things like that, actually seeing how your systems react to it, and focus sharing and collaboration, talking to people about what you do and making things happen. That's threat-informed defense. Thank you for coming to my talk. Okay, my point is that of all the complexity that exists in our industry, end of the day, malware is malware. It's understandable. There is a finite set of capabilities out there, however large, that is entirely understandable. And there are ways to understand it and to make it actionable inside your environment. So malware is malware. Why are you reacting to it and not preparing for it? That's the question here that we're trying to get to. So the first thing you need to do, in my opinion, but apparently my opinion matters because I'm sitting here on the stage, or at least I tell that to myself, is to know yourself, all right? When I say this, it's knowing what's important and why is the only way you can actually start walking down a path that leads you anywhere near your destination, okay? And the way to do this that I found great success with is by conducting what's called a center of gravity and critical vulnerability analysis. Who here has heard these terms before? Fantastic. These are my favorite audiences. Okay. Center of gravity. This is the thing that if it's broken or compromised, results in you failing your mission. Okay? So let's just presume that your company makes widgets. If a cyber attack happens and your company can't make widgets, they got after your center of gravity, you lose. That's what I'm saying here. Critical vulnerability, though, that is the means by which the center of gravity can be broken. It is the avenue of approach. It is how you get to said center of gravity and break it. So, two key terms. Knowing yourself means knowing what those are in your case. And there are processes you can use to figure out what that is. In a nutshell, let's take a fictional company called Rift Research. Scientific R&D, they do government contracts, they do public sector stuff, doesn't really matter. That's what we're working with. Private sector, public sector, so we start by decomposing an organization into its constituent operational elements, the things that individually contribute to their own missions and to the overall mission. Tell me to stop if I'm going too fast, I talk fast, I am a third child. In the public sector, they have military contracts, obviously, and energy contracts. In the private sector, they got consumer and industrial. Okay, so each one, we break it down, we see that there are many different parts contributing to the mission of this whole. Now, we continue our analysis all the way down the binary tree, and we get to this point where we say, well, that's interesting. The military contracts and the consumer production contracts both have an awful lot of money coming in from these really amazing, like, radiation-proof shower curtains. Like, they are amazing. They're super good. And if anybody here can pick out the actual Easter egg in all of this, I will do something cool. So we get to this point where we're like, well, that's really important because if I can't make and sell shower curtains here at Rift Research, we lose a lot of money. So we can consider that a center of gravity. Therefore, we need to figure out what its critical vulnerabilities are. We do some more analysis and we find out that, well, the formulae for the quote-unquote plastic that we use to make these shower curtains are pretty sensitive. We don't want to lose those. One critical vulnerability. The production lines. They are very, very sensitive and extremely dangerous, and bad things can happen if somebody messes with them. Cool, another one. Customer data. We don't want to lose the trust of our deep-pocketed customers. Nobody wants that. Production figures. We don't want another company to ace us in the market. Okay, so we now have the ability to look to say, if I can protect these four things, this center of gravity has a reduced risk profile. That is the analysis in its simplest form. And I promise I'm going to get to MITRE ATT&CK, but like I said, it's not another MITRE ATT&CK talk. I got ahead of myself, so don't worry about this slide. I talk too fast and too much at times. Now, what we want to do is break these things down into their constituent components, understand what those things are that if they break, fail, or taken, or messed with, or touched in the wrong way, will cause us to fail, understand how those things can be affected, and then take action against those things. Throw a hand up if I am talking gibberish. Fantastic. Love to hear it, love to see it. So, what do we do now? We need to understand, given a critical vulnerability and the context within which we exist and operate as an organization, as an InfoSec professional, how somebody could get after our stuff, how they could actually exploit that critical vulnerability. We need a means of attack. What is the actual, let's take it down one more level. We had center of gravity, critical vulnerability. We're going down another layer of abstraction into the means of attack. I'm not talking about keystrokes quite yet. We'll get there, but let's just say this. Our organization makes widgets. In order to create widgets, we need wadgets. Okay, well, that sounds like a critical vulnerability to me, because if I don't get my wadgets on time, I ain't making no widgets. bad news. So means of attack could be some way of disrupting our ability to receive on-time, accurate, and complete shipments of widgets. Okay, there's an awful lot we can pull out of that. If anybody here works in any kind of logistics, a company that has any kind of complicated logistics pipeline, you see a variety of ways this could all get hosed up. So, great. We now understand what could happen. Fantastic. And we know which of those things that could happen are the worst things. So we have priorities. So we can start understanding the means by which they can be attacked and start devising defenses. So now we let the threat inform us. We know the things we don't want to happen. Now we want to know, well, who can and might actually do those things to us? Okay. This is how we make intelligence useful, and this is where we start talking about things like MITRE ATT&CK. Okay. The center of gravity and the critical vulnerability, these are context for a more detailed analysis as you're seeing us go down these layers of abstraction. We need to know what reasonable means of attack exist to exploit the critical vulnerability and actually figure out who's capable of doing that. And the means by which they could and they have or could done, they have done it or could do it. There we are. Now, I'm not going to run you through a full PMSEPT analysis. This is reasonably common mnemonic for knowing which bits and bobs and parts and factors of various threat actors there are to understand to figure out if they care about what you do. However, it's a handy abstraction to understand, am I involved in something that has political weight? Am I involved in something that makes money? Is there information involved that's sensitive or could be used to do political, economic, or military things? Do I exist physically in a place that makes me more vulnerable? Or physically in a place that produces political considerations? Who knows? Military, it's political with a looming specter of violence. Same thing, right? Social, do people like or not like my company, my organization, because of what we do or don't do? I've had to nod at that one more than a few times. Infrastructure, do I depend on something that is easily attackable that is not within my direct control? Is there infrastructure that I depend on that I need to ensure I have backups for? And is there a certain time of day, month, or year, or sidereal time that is important or significant about when things are happening? Fair questions to ask. Now, I'm saying this as to establish the context of the who. We were just talking about the what and the why in those earlier slides. So we're talking about kind of the who now. We're going to get to how next. All right. Courses of action. Who's heard courses of action before? Cool. All right, cool. Welcome to class. This is fantastic. All right. A COA, course of action, I don't like saying course of action too much, discrete statements of possible adversary action. The who, what, when, where, why, and how. The why is sometimes important, not always. The most important thing about generating a COA is that it feeds out of the critical vulnerability and center of gravity analysis you did, and that they describe feasible and testable conditions which will guide your planning for red and blue team actions. Feasible and testable. There's no point saying, well, the adversary could jump off of a mountain and roll down, achieve terminal to velocity, and become a bowling ball and go through the wall into our data center. Probably not. Even if there was feasible, you're not testing it. Extreme example, but you see the point. So, using a COA, you wanted to look at every critical vulnerability you found and give it at least one COA. Like if you can't come up with a COA for it, it's not really good CV. So most of your CVs will have several of these, however. And that means code generation is going to take a minute, but that's good because this is that brainstorming session when you sit down with red, blue, infrastructure, whoever else wants to come and play, and think about all the awful things that could happen. Everyone loves being a doomer. I mean, come on. And so what we have here on the bottom is a completed COA. We have the who, ornery opossum, because threat actor naming conventions are hilarious. The what and the where, this is in relation to the critical vulnerability. They'll compromise a supply fulfillment logistics workstation. They're going to use spear phishing, as we always do. That's the how. And the why, it's important, it's also not important, depending on how you phrase it. But the why is saying, because they want to cause a cascading delay in widget production. And this is the part that really ties back to your critical vulnerability and thereby your center of gravity. The thing they're trying to affect is the why. We're trying to understand the how. and the who, so that we understand the defenses we need to put in place, and more specifically, against what kind of capabilities. Now that we've thought about all our COAs, we know all the awful things that could happen, who might do it, and how they might do it, we will become the threat, all right? And there are many ways to do that. I'm not going to tell you how. I do work for a breach and attack simulation company. I'm not going to tell you how. I'm not in sales. I love red teams. I think red teams are great. I used to be on a red team. Either way, now we do emulation planning, okay? We need to think like an adversary and put together a campaign against ourselves. We turn COAs into TTPs. When I say TTPs, I mean MITRE ATT&CK TTPs. All right, we want to actually start framing these out in an understandable format so that we can generate on-keyboard actions. And from those on-keyboard actions, we can generate defensive strategies and mitigations. That defensive piece happens next. We align our TTPs to the defenses that we can actually test, the things that we monitor, things that we know if they've done something or haven't done something or can't do something. Then we validate our plan by running it. Now, we're going to derive our TTPs. Where's my timer? Okay. Derive TTPs from things that have been done and things that could be done, right? Past actor events and intelligence, how has it been done in the past, and associated and relevant tools. What has been used to do this before? What we're trying to do is build AOE here, okay? Area of effect for anyone who's not a gamer, which I'm assuming is a small proportion of the people here. I mean, we want to go for AOE on our defenses because no one ever said, when in doubt, firebolt. I see you laugh. I see you D&Ders over there. No, it's when in doubt, fireball. All right, you want a large area of effect. You want to do as much as possible with one strike at any given time. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to see the overlap between what the our actors of interest are capable of doing and the things that we know that they've done in the past. This way we start to see, if I put in a mitigation against this, it's going to cover me against these past campaigns. We want to reduce that space of possibilities for the adversary to get around us. And you'll see that I'm doing this in MITRE ATT&CK. When I want to know how it's been done, I'm going to go into MITRE ATT&CK. I'm going to look at the average to the groups page, click into the group that's important to me, look at all the techniques they've used, and then I'm going to go to that technique page. I'm going to see all the tools that implement it. Because each tool will have a slightly different implementation, and it's also have a bunch of other capabilities that we should probably assume that the adversary could use against us, even if they're not listed in the adversary's page. Gibberish or not? Excellent. Aligning TTPs to defenses. We all know what defenses are, don't we? We're InfoSec professionals. Even if we're red teamers, we know the things we have to break. Breaking things is fun. So when we're coming up with a test, even as a red teamer, you're coming up with a test, you know what you're testing in most cases. Depending on what kind of test you're doing, you might know what's actually waiting for you in the objective network. Either way, when we come up with a test, we want to know this is what should be catching this, because I am a stalwart, upstanding, by the book blue teamer who knows exactly what all my tools do. Yes? Okay. And I'm going to say, well, this should catch this, and this one, and this one. Yep, okay. I have an entire emulation plan of things whereby I know what they're going to do. And this is the important part. When we emulate an adversary, by any means you choose, you know exactly what you're doing. You know, in many cases to the keystroke level, what is going, what's going on the keys, what's going across the wire or the air, and what's going to hit you. And so you should understand exactly where that should be caught. Now, I'm not expecting everybody to sit here and say, I know exactly how all of my tools are configured. I don't know I know exactly down to the bit level my CrowdStrike policies. No, you don't. That's okay. We're finding out. So we align TTPs to defenses so we know what we're testing. Now, there are a lot of ways you can do this. I'm not going to bore you with it. Fact is, you want to understand sequentially how it's going to test, or should I say roughly sequentially. You can Gantt it out if you want. I used Excel because, you know what, I was in the military for a while and I had to do that a lot. And then we say, this is how we're going to implement the technique. This is how we're going to implement the detection or the prevention. This is the policy we're putting in place. And we go forward. I'm getting the hook here, just kidding. I'm terrible at time planning for these. So detection planning, ask me about it afterwards. I want to get to a few more things. Now, when I say brag about it, I mean interact with people. concerning the things that you have planned and done. If you're doing this in a silo, you are absolutely missing the point. If you are a blue teamer and you're saying, like, well, I'm going to test myself, I'm like, are you sure? Like, I don't doubt that you could, but are you sure that's the best idea? Do you have the context and the experience to say, this is exactly what I should be testing myself against? Shouldn't you even ask somebody who does cyber threat intel? Should you ask somebody who's a red teamer, who understands tradecraft at a deeper level than you do? Maybe. The same logic applies to everybody in that triangle. Don't forget your sysadmins and IT ops. Don't forget your sysadmins and IT ops. We love them. I love them. If you're in here, I love you. Okay? And we need you. Because whenever you want to fix things, you have to ask them. Just a little warning. So go brag about it. Be like, look at this great idea we had. Look at this plan we came up with. And they're like, oh, that plan's kind of sucky. Let's work on it. Okay, fine. And we work on it. Then then you have a great plan. You execute the plan. You improve yourself. You get into this wonderful little cycle. On step 5 right there, it took me about 20 minutes to make that graphic and bend the arrows because, you know, PowerPoint is great. That's the important part right there, folks. Have to get into that self-improvement cycle. You have to get to the point where you are continuously testing each other and making mitigations, making it harder for everybody at every step. And you're doing that by increasing the actual area of effect of the test that you come up with, by doing good research, and understanding all the ways that bad things could happen to you. So, it was a MITRE ATT&CK talk, but not actually a MITRE ATT&CK talk. Now, I've got some stuff here that's just some tools, free tools that use MITRE ATT&CK. I'm just going to kind of blow through them here for a second. Attack Workbench, if you haven't seen it. Excellent collaboration tool for annotating and collaborating over your own instance of MITRE ATT&CK that is continuously updated from the core repository at CTID. Fantastic tool. Highly recommend it. Attack-powered suit. And I have to just say this. The folks who came up with this and wrote most of the code, who wants to guess where they're from? You get it right, I don't know what I'll do, but all right. Some awesome, incredibly smart dudes from Fujitsu. They're like, we need this. And they wrote it, and they're like, well, we get to name it. And we're like, yeah, you do. You absolutely do, because they wrote most of the source code. Powered suit. Anybody here is a Mobile Suit Gundam fan? No? Yeah? Anybody? Nice. So, Powered Suit. It is an add-on for your browser that massively simplifies a research workflow that involves using MITRE ATT&CK for any purpose within it. Very cool. Attack Navigator. A little more complex. You can generate custom versions of every one of the attack matrices. Download it as a JSON object and then do whatever the hell you want to do with that JSON object. Very fun. Lots of interesting applications for this. If you want to talk about it, catch me afterwards. CAR, Cyber Analytics Repository. It's free analytics. It's literally what it is. People just put analytics into it to catch all the various MITRE ATT&CK techniques. Sounds good to me. TRAM, natural language processing tool. You give it a plain text intel report, it spits out attack techniques. Pretty nifty. Worked on this one myself. Very fun. Anyways, thanks for coming to my TID talk. I'm Ben, and I'm not on Twitter. Any questions?